When I got the call, I was standing in the break room, nursing a lukewarm coffee and trying to ignore the nerves fluttering in my stomach. The voice on the other end was calm and formal. Congratulations, Tessa. You've been promoted to Vice President of Strategy. It took a second to register. My heart slammed against my ribs like a drum, and I could barely choke out a thank you before hanging up. Years of working late, thinking 10 steps ahead, sacrificing weekends. It had finally paid off. My team gathered around me as word spread, offering hugs and handshakes, their pride warming me more than the coffee ever could. Even the regional director, an infamously stern man, cracked a rare smile and clasped my hand in both of his. You're the future of this company, Tessa, he said. Don't ever doubt it. For a moment, I let myself bask in it. I thought about how proud my family would be, especially my father, who always drilled the importance of success into us, or my brother, Nathan, who I used to believe looked up to me. But when I called home to share the news, the reaction was not what I expected. VP of Strategy? That sounds stressful, my mother muttered. Are you sure you want all that pressure? My father was quiet for a beat. Then, in his usual gruff voice, he said, You should think about stepping aside. Let Nathan try for a position like that. You know he's been struggling. I blinked, stunned. What? Dad, this is my promotion. Nathan's voice piped in from the background. You always get everything. Maybe it's time someone else had a chance. No congratulations, no pride, just resentment. And in that instant, I realized I had been living in a fantasy where my success would bring my family together. Instead, it drew a sharp line through the center of us, one I had not drawn. Their words lingered longer than they should have. I tried to brush it off, to focus on work and the amazing opportunity in front of me. But it wasn't easy. Their coldness was a splinter under my skin, festering with each passing day. Still, I didn't realize how deep the rot went. Not until the betrayal came to light. It started with a feeling, a gut instinct that something wasn't right. I had been reviewing some old financial documents, mostly out of curiosity, when I noticed discrepancies in my trust fund statements. Transactions I didn't recognize, withdrawals I never authorized, investments I had no memory of approving. I reached out to my financial advisor, who had always been a bit cagey, a little too friendly with my father. It took a few pointed questions before he admitted it. The money had been accessed through a proxy, someone I trusted, someone in my family, Nathan. Apparently, my father had coerced my advisor into rerouting the trust's assets to fund several of Nathan's startup ventures over the years, all of it behind my back. They had used my signature, forged documents, the whole 9 yards. My own flesh and blood had stolen from me. I confronted them over dinner. The room had that heavy silence that comes before a storm. I know what you did, I said flatly, placing the folder of evidence on the table. My father didn't even flinch. You have more than enough, Tessa. You don't need all that money. Nathan needed help. You took what wasn't yours, I said, voice shaking, and you didn't even have the decency to ask. Nathan looked defiant. You always had everything handed to you. I just wanted a shot. So you stole from me? It was Dad's idea, he muttered. And then, in a moment that still burns in my memory, my father stood up, his face twisted with fury. Ungrateful brat, he hissed, and before I could react, he slapped me. The room went still. My mother gasped but did nothing, just like always. That slap was the final blow, the end of whatever illusion I had been clinging to about family loyalty. In that moment, I saw them for who they really were, and I made a promise to myself. I would take everything back, with interest. The next morning, I walked into my office like a different woman. Gone was the loyal daughter, the accommodating sister. In her place stood someone harder, smarter, and ready to reclaim what had been stolen. First, I called Evelyn Park. Evelyn had a reputation. She was ruthless, brilliant, and had never lost a case involving financial fraud. I laid everything out on her desk, bank records, emails, texts. She listened in silence, flipping through each page like she was reading a war manual. When I finished, she looked up at me and said, "Let's bury them." Our first move was to freeze the trust account. Evelyn filed an emergency injunction, citing fraud and misappropriation. Within 48 hours, access to the funds was locked. Nathan wouldn't be buying any new toys with my money. Next, we built a timeline. I dug through every financial record, old email thread, and calendar invite I had. Evelyn interviewed my advisor under threat of subpoena, and he crumbled like wet paper, handing over all the incriminating details. But I wasn't done. At work, I began a quiet audit of interdepartmental transfers. I had access now. As vice president, I could look deeper into company finances. What I found made my blood run cold. My father and Nathan hadn't just taken from me personally. They had manipulated company assets, redirecting funds from dormant accounts into a shell company under Nathan's name. Worse, they had tried to paint me as unstable, leaking rumors that I was suffering from a mental health breakdown to justify shutting me out. So, I filed a whistleblower complaint. Anonymous at first through our ethics hotline, then formal with documentation. The compliance team, who had always been hesitant around my family's influence, suddenly had no choice. There was too much evidence. I watched it unfold like a chess match. One move at a time, calculated and precise. Evelyn prepared a civil suit while I prepared a presentation. Not for investors or shareholders, for war. The day of the board meeting arrived. I wore my sharpest suit and my calmest expression. Evelyn accompanied me, her presence a quiet warning to anyone who might try to dismiss me. My heart pounded, but I walked into the room with my head high. The board of directors, 10 men and women in tailored suits, sat at a long oak table. My father was already there, smug and confident, Nathan beside him looking bored. They didn't even rise when I entered. I placed my folder on the table and began. Thank you all for being here. I have some important information regarding corporate misconduct involving 2 senior individuals. My voice was clear, unshaken, even as I outlined their misdeeds. I showed transaction records, internal memos, emails, and statements. I walked them through the timeline, explaining how funds were embezzled, how my trust had been violated, how false claims about my mental state were circulated. Gasps echoed around the room. My father's expression shifted from amusement to alarm. Nathan looked pale. Evelyn spoke next, citing the legal ramifications, including breach of fiduciary duty, identity fraud, and defamation. Then came the final blow. An official motion from the compliance department recommending immediate suspension of both my father and Nathan pending investigation. The board voted unanimously. My father and Nathan were barred from the premises by the end of the day. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just sat in silence as the gavel came down. And justice, real, concrete justice, landed squarely on their shoulders. Evelyn squeezed my arm gently. This is just the beginning. And she was right, because I wasn't just going to reclaim what was mine. I was going to build something even bigger. The fallout was immediate. News of the scandal spread like wildfire through the company and beyond. My father's name, once synonymous with legacy and leadership, was now associated with fraud and disgrace. Nathan, once heralded as the up-and-coming golden boy of tech innovation, became a punchline in the business community. Articles titled, "How Nepotism Nearly Killed a Fortune, 500 Inches," and "Tessa Caldwell, the Woman Who Took Her Family Down," headlined major business publications. I didn't hide from the attention. I granted interviews. I let the public know what had been done, not out of vengeance, but transparency. People needed to understand that even the most respected families could rot from the inside. I was flooded with messages from colleagues, women especially, who thanked me for standing up, for refusing to stay silent. It was surreal, being seen not just as a survivor, but a symbol. I was asked to speak at conferences, to lead initiatives on corporate transparency, and eventually to head a new internal division focused on strategic development and equity inclusion. A division I named my division. With my compensation and stock options, I began acquiring shares of the company quietly, gradually, strategically. Within a year, I had enough to secure a board seat. My voice was no longer one they could ignore. I was the voice. I reinvested part of my trust fund, now fully restored and growing again, into ventures led by women and underrepresented founders. The same opportunities my family tried to hoard, I was now redistributing to people who deserved them. As for my family, they tried to salvage their reputation. My father released a statement claiming he was misguided by a sense of duty to his son. Nathan attempted to pivot into motivational speaking about second chances. Neither effort landed. They lost their influence, their power, their name, and I didn't lift a finger to help because they had taught me one invaluable lesson. Sometimes the only way to win is to let them burn and build your own empire from the ashes. It was a Monday morning, a year to the day since my promotion. My new office, sleek, minimalist, commanding, overlooked the skyline. I was reviewing proposals for an international expansion when my assistant buzzed in. "Tessa, there are 2 visitors here to see you. They say they're your parents." I paused, letting the silence stretch. "Send them in." They looked older, smaller. My father's proud posture had crumpled into something tired and hunched. My mother clutched a worn purse like it was a lifeline. Nathan wasn't with them. "Tessa," my mother began, her voice brittle. We need help." My father didn't meet my eyes. "I know we made mistakes, but we can make this right. I just need a job. Something small. I can prove myself." I rose from my chair and walked to a side table. From a drawer, I pulled out 2 crisp job applications, the kind we offered to interns and junior associates. I placed them on the table between us. "These are entry-level, competitive pay, benefits. You'll have to go through the full process like everyone else." My father stared at the forms. "You can't be serious." I met his eyes. "I am. That is all I owe you." My mother teared up. "We raised you, and I survived you." I didn't say anything else. I didn't have to. They turned and walked out, the door clicking softly behind them. I returned to my desk, calm, resolved. There was no joy in that moment, just closure. That night, I stood on my balcony, the city glittering below. I thought of the journey I had taken, from betrayal to power, from heartbreak to resolve. I wasn't the same woman who had once sought her family's approval. I was more. I had forged an identity independent of them, built a legacy from the ashes of their deceit. And as I looked ahead to the future I was still creating, I felt peace. Because in the end, I didn't just win. I became unstoppable. The story explores the fragility of family ties, the deep pain of betrayal, and the power of reclaiming one's narrative. It shines a light on the importance of standing up for oneself, especially in environments built to undermine. At its core, it is a story of transformation. How a woman broken by betrayal rises to redefine what it means to succeed. Tessa evolves from a hopeful professional, seeking familial validation, to a strategic powerhouse who reclaims her autonomy and voice. Her father and brother are revealed as entitled manipulators. Her mother, though passive, represents the danger of silent complicity. By the end, Tessa isn't just a survivor. She is the architect of her future.